Expectations are even higher for LSU this year. Can they overperform again? Head coach Brian Kelly brought the Tigers to the SEC championship in year one off of a huge upset against Alabama. A lot of that success was due to a top 10 offense, and a lot of that offensive success was due to quarterback Jayden Daniels. Daniels is an electric athlete who thrives when given space. He's probably the most potent as a runner when he's allowed to escape from the pocket and take advantage of defenders who've turned to run with receivers. But he's the kind of athlete that you need to get involved in any way possible. That's why much of LSU's run game revolves around inside zone. Inside zone is a pretty standard run play that uses double teams to get forward push on defensive linemen. This allows their generally bigger-bodied running backs, John Emery, Noah Cain, and transfer Logan Diggs, to get their momentum moving downhill quickly. The simplicity of this play allows them to layer on complexity using skill players. The first twist they add is to leave the backside end unblocked and have Daniels read him. If he collapses inwards, Daniels pulls the ball with green grass ahead of him. They can get their tight end Mason Taylor involved as well. This inside zone action pulls up the linebackers, who lose Taylor working across the line of scrimmage. This gets him a free release into the flats that's an easy completion and a big gain. Taylor was one of the best tight ends in the country last season as a true freshman, and LSU will likely look to him a lot in the passing game this season. Last season, their favorite way to target him was through deep outs. On this play, LSU ran off the corner with the outside receiver, which isolated Taylor on a slower inside linebacker. Offensive coordinator Mike Denbrock loves scheming up easy completions like this for Jayden Daniels. In fact, a whole 49% of their attempts were between 1 and 10 yards downfield. That's good for third in the country. The major way they schemed up these easy completions were from hitches. They could either do them in isolation like you see here, or they could incorporate them as part of a bigger concept. Here they're running a snag concept out of this bunch formation. Snags creates a triangle read that stretches this outside linebacker. Since he stays with the out, it opens up the hitch inside. Leaning on these completions makes a lot of sense for their personnel. Firstly, they have dynamic receivers like Malik Nabers, who's one of the best wideouts going into 2023 in the country, and it makes sense to get him as many touches as possible. And secondly, it allows them to work with the strengths and avoid the weaknesses of Jayden Daniels. Last year, he was almost the perfect quarterback at times. He led the country in rushing yards for quarterbacks last season and was 14th in completion percentage. He also led the country in turnover-worthy throws according to PFF. But that being said, I think he struggled reading the field a little bit. The main piece of evidence I have to support this is that LSU was 29th in time until pressure, but they were 103rd in sack rate. I think he tended to panic if his first read wasn't open and trusted a bit too much in his legs to get him out of bad situations. That stat also leads me to believe that he struggles a bit anticipating whether receivers will be open later in the play. However, there's a good chance that this changes. He'll have another year in the system and a potential deep threat in 6'4" Brian Thomas, who can take the top off the defense and give him another pressure outlet downfield. If he does end up struggling with these things, I don't think LSU will miss a step. They have a lot of trust in backup Garrett Nussmeier to lead the offense, and by all accounts, he has a chance to be even better than Daniels, who's still a legitimate Heisman contender. This unit will likely be another top 10 offense for Brian Kelly's Tigers. But what about their defense? LSU bases out of a 3-4, and while they've lost a lot of talent off their front three, they seem to have reloaded just fine. The group is anchored by Mekhi, Wingo, and Mason Smith. Wingo was LSU's highest graded defensive lineman last season per PFF, which is quite the statement since he was being compared to the likes of BJ Ojulari and Jaquelin Roy. And Smith was a true freshman All-American before being sidelined with an injury last season. Smith will miss the first game of the season, but let's be realistic here. This is LSU. They're going to have good defensive linemen waiting to replace him. Behind them may be the best linebacker in college football in Harold Perkins. Actually, that's a bit unfair to him. While he was listed at linebacker both last season and this season, he actually took a majority of his snaps as a pass rusher. They tended to either use him on the outside to generate pressure like a true 4-3 rush end, or they would insert him inside and use him as a spy with elite closing speed to shut down even the shiftiest of quarterbacks. I think he'll have to play a little bit more true linebacker with the departure of Micah Baskerville, but I have no reason to believe he won't excel there as well. so it's probably more accurate to say he may be one of the best defenders in the country. His only weakness, and really this is a weakness of the entire linebacking core as a whole, is that they tended to be a little bit over-aggressive. Teams learned that they could take advantage of this with plays like this outside zone play action. This wide zone action draws up the linebackers, which opens up space behind them. They were 117th in the country in terms of yards per play on outside zone play action at a whopping 10.3 yards per play. While this does seem like a bit of a niche problem, they still give up almost 300 yards on the season on similar plays. The problem will probably be sorted out though. They were in their first year with a new defensive coordinator, and the most talented of the bunch was a true freshman. You expect him to make, and subsequently learn from, mistakes just like that. Behind the linebackers is the biggest question mark on this roster. LSU bases out a cover 3, where they keep 3 players in a deep zone and roll an extra safety in the box for run support. They were similarly aggressive in the passing game, seemingly putting an emphasis on shutting down passes attempted in the 1 to 10 yard range. You can see the upshot of that here, as they had the 7th best estimated points added in the country on throws in that range. This really limited opposing completion percentage and made it difficult for teams to methodically move the ball through the air. The downside is they struggled against deep balls. By season's end, they gave up 10 touchdowns of 20 or more air yards, good for 113th in the country. They addressed this issue with transfers Denver Harris, Zy Alexander, and Deuce Chestnut, but time will tell if that unit can gel enough to shore up their weaknesses. I fear that it sounds like I've been negative about this defensive unit, and that's not really fair. I think they're the weaker of the two, but their front 7 is as good of a group as you'll see in the country. A lot of these bad-looking counting stats can be attributed to their brutal schedule last season. In honesty, Harold Perkins by himself makes the defense special, and when he's given the freedom to be used strategically anywhere on the field because of the help that he gets from the front 3, I think they're going to be formidable. Partner that with what could be one of the best offenses in the country, and LSU is again looking to make a serious threat to take the SEC West. And it's not far-fetched to think that they could also contend for the whole dang thing. I had a lot of fun diving into this team. LSU fans, let me know how I did in the comments below. I always enjoy hearing more about your team, and I'm sure that I missed plenty in this short video. As always, I'll leave the transcripts on Knowles247, so make sure to head over there to further the discussion. Thanks.